I I don't know. I could try to give a plot synopsis, but that's like hard to do for these games.
Okay, so this is the Story Mode podcast now that my brain's back in gear. It's a little bit thrown together today, as it might seem obvious. Basically, we sit down and we talk about a game that interests us. We talk about the story, we talk about the mechanics, we talk about what we thought about it. We don't really review it, we just kind of yell about it, and generally complain about it. That's kind of what this is turning into. This is turning into us complaining for about an hour of whatever game we happen to encounter. And this time it happens to be 30 Flights of Loving and the prequel, Gravity Bone, which are... I'm going to give you the best description of these goddamn games as I possibly can. They're like kind of early 1900s mafia things, and they throw like an entire novel worth of story at you in about 15 minutes. So imagine you play this game and it's just kind of this psychedelic blockhead adventure from beginning to end, and then it just kind of ends and you're like, what? And then you play it again and you're like, there's a story there. And then you play it again and you're like, why am I still doing this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, pretty much.
they run in the Quake 2 engine, so they're incredibly fast, and it honestly, I wish I could just change a few things, because Gravity Bone, the first part of the series, made me feel goddamn sick. Like, I don't know what it was. It might have been the resolution, maybe it was the speed, but I actually, like, I was sitting this far back, and, like, I had my keyboard on my lap because I couldn't sit any closer to the screen. But that's besides the point. So I think Lewis probably has the best synapse here. And I think that we should just go over that first. Like, just to give the people watching just a basic idea of what the hell's happening here.
Overview of the games.
Yeah, just overview. Like, just overview of the story, more or less, and then we'll get into discussion.
That's a bit difficult to do. I mean, I'll say right off the bat that a lot of these games are kind of up for interpretation.
So, what's your interpretation of it then?
The Gravity Bone actually is harder to come up with an interpretation for. So in Gravity Bone, you start out as Citizen Abel, sort of secret agent guy. And the first thing you end up doing is getting a sort of discreet champagne glass and giving it to this guy. And at the very end of that mission, they have this little thing that explains that there was essentially a tracking device in it, and that they're now going to track the guy, and the person who hired you gave you a whole bunch of money. And so then the next thing that happens is you go into a very similar situation. You end up, in a spot, you end up with another covert mission, in this case to photograph a bunch of birds that explode.
For no particular reason.
Yep, exactly. And right as you're about to finish that mission, this lady, which I'm going to refer to as Other Girl, ends up shooting you in the back and running off with your camera. So you give chase through one of the best chase scenes I think I've ever played in a game.
Frustrating. Frustrating. Go
on. And then she shoots you, and you die, and you get a montage of your life. And that's Gravity Bone.
Okay, so let's just talk about Gravity Bone first, and then we'll move into 30 Flights, which is a little bit more psychedelic. Should I say?
It's non-linear.
More, I would say more linear. But, well, 30 Flights is more linear, rather. Anyways, So let's just start with Mike.
Okay.
What was your experience with Gravity Bone?
I'm gonna say it was a bad experience just from the technical standpoint, but once I actually got the game working and when I realized the game ended and it didn't crash for the first time ever, so like I pretty much ended up playing it like 6 times because I kept on thinking it just crashed. I think it was interesting but confusing, and I think this is the point that Lewis made. It's a lot about like interpretation and stuff, but I think the Gravity Bone has a more graspable story. And, that's the secret agent. I really enjoyed the first mission when it throws you in and tells you, hey, here's a card. Go do this. Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was quite fun in terms of like how it looks and how it feels. Story wise, as said, confusing because it just really chucks you in. But then the cards helped.
Yeah, I quite liked. I actually did quite like just the setup of Gravity Bone. It was a nice little. It was like here's a little thing that you have to do, and it almost kind of felt like I was playing a little mission pulled out of like Dishonored or something. It's like you have to get in there, you have to do your little thing and run around and complete your objective, and then get out. And then it just kind of it. I what kind of threw me off, at least plot wise, with Gravity Bone was there was nothing really tying the two halves together. It was a you're in this mission and you have to give this dude this drink and then they're gonna track him, and then it's you're in this other mission and you have to for the second mission you have to take pictures of these birds which explode after you take their photo, which was weird, and then lady who shoots you in the back takes your camera and runs off and then ends up shooting you in the face. I don't know. It was like there was no real connection. I had no there was nothing connecting anything, and I don't know if either of you guys got anything else out of that, but
That's interesting, and I can definitely see where you're coming from there. To me, what I really liked about Gravity Bone is, to me, it's sort of like, it's like the creator sort of set out and said, okay, so my goal with this game is to subvert expectations. I'm going to build up expectations and continually tear them down. And he kind of did a really good job of that leading up to the big one, which is the start and end of that chase scene. But they kind of did a lot of those subtle things. So you just immediately get dropped into a mission. You're like, what's going on? And you don't get that letter, that telegram. You don't get it until you step out of the elevator. So it sort of just pops up on you, and then it tells you what to do. And then you go try to do that, and you end up kind of in this weird, you end up going to basically the surface area and then jumping back behind a water heater. And then you kind of go out and, you're doing sort of all these weird things, but it keeps everything grounded. Things like that small cutscene at the end of the first level keeps everything within enough context that you're surprised when it breaks out of it.
Yeah, I guess kind of. Maybe I was more surprised at the design of Gravity Bone in general, because I did play 30 Flights of Loving first. It was easier to get a hold of, and then I was kind of like, well, I probably should have played the game that came first in the series first. That would have been a good idea, because I actually played the two games out of order. Then I played them back in order, and it's actually interesting playing Gravity Bone into 30 Flights just because of how Gravity Bone is kind of a open-ended. It's a free game for people watching. If you want to download this game that we're talking about, Gravity Bone, the first half is free. The second half is $5. It's on Steam. But it's just kind of like this little open-ended thing, and then it goes into suddenly super linear. And the last 2 minutes, that chase scene feels very similar to what 30 Flights of Loving turned into.
I think, I'll get to a little bit more of that, but it also had its more open-ended moments. I think they both kind of did that. What I kind of liked about the chase scene is there was some pretty funny, basically, usage of sort of player expectations there as well. So, you start by giving chase, and then you start getting into the sequence with the trains, where she basically ends up getting a lead because she just narrowly dodges the train and you have to get out of the way of it.
Died to that train 3 times.
Yeah, I died a few different times. I think one of the most subtle things I really enjoyed was there's one where she's on one side of a barrier, you're on the other, and a train blocks you from getting to her. And so she just stands there for a second, like takes a drag of her cigarette, and then just starts running afterwards. And I thought that was kind of a clever little moment there. And then immediately after that is the dinner scene, which is hilarious.
Running back and forth on the table.
Yeah.
That's straight out of a lot of 60s movies. Like, if you've ever seen, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Some Like It Hot had a scene very similar to that, which is a Marilyn Monroe movie from a long time ago. But yeah, one thing that I think that these games do really well is just atmosphere. What we're talking about right now actually, I think, takes place like pre-World War II. That's kind of what it felt like 1940s for Gravity Bone to me.
I don't feel like Gravity Bone has a setting as much as it does an aesthetic. Like, it's meant to emulate kind of James Bond era stuff. But it's not explicitly, like it happens in a decade or it happens in this location.
But to me, it just kind of felt that way. It felt like it was in that era just because of 30 Flights of Loving being explicitly prohibition, right? It's 100% prohibition. In fact, there's a sign on the wall that says prohibition, no alcohol permitted. Like, that's the first thing you see at the very beginning of 30 Flights, and that makes me feel like this takes place a little bit before that because they have very similar era guns and weaponry.
Maybe, but if you look at the sign, that one of the newspaper clippings that comes before that sign, you'll see that it says the president has fallen and the mecha president has risen.
Okay,
so I wouldn't so I wouldn't necessarily say that it happens within our world.
Okay,
well, exactly, or like alternative timelines and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, Mecha Hitler's a thing. So if there's maybe this just takes place in the Wolfenstein universe.
Except it's Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
If you look at the photos, it's a drawing of Nikola Tesla. So.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I was just trying to place it in my head. But yeah, no, like I can't tell whether I like the games or not at all. I didn't have as many issues as Mike did with crashing. But I did have problems with direction in Gravity Bone at one point. When you're taking pictures of birds and you have to jump from flag to flag, it actually took me a good solid 5 minutes to figure out that I could actually jump to that flag. So I just kind of walked in circles for a little bit.
That's my biggest complaint with Gravity Bone. I actually had to look up a guide the first time I played it. Was just the platforming there is so out of left field, and it's really unfair. Like, the only way you can win it is to realize that the hitboxes are 5 times larger than they need to be.
I think if you've played any of the Quake games that are built in the same engine, you would have known that.
Yeah,
so it might be just targeting that audience and just assuming that. But yeah, I don't know. To me, the games had a very game jam feel, and that's the same thing you get out of those games. They all seem and look like they've just been put together in a short period of time, and that they were just a proof of concept. And that's where the larger hitboxes also come in.
Which is interesting because 30 Flights of Loving had a 3-year development time.
It actually wasn't the full 3 year. He released a few non-first person shooter games in between.
Yeah. Back to the bigger hitboxes and the Quake engine things. That's actually the way Mike put it, is how I figured it out. I just kind of was like, oh yeah, right, this is in the Quake engine. What am I doing? And I just jumped onto the flag and just beat the platforming section in a few seconds. But until then, I was just kind of walking around in circles trying to figure out why I kept hearing the Roller Coaster Tycoon train sound going past me constantly, which was something.
Cool. But yeah, I wanted to ask Lewis, why did you say let's call her Other Girl?
And this actually leads into the story of 30 Flights of Loving. But
well, that's perfect.
Yeah, because in the story of 30 Flights of Loving, there's a very subtle connection back to Gravity Bone. And I say that 30 Flights of Loving has 3 characters you interact with: girl, guy, and other girl. And it happened to be that other girl is the one that shoots you in Gravity Bone. So I guess I'll lead straight into the synopsis of 30 Flights of Loving. The first thing you need to figure out, and this is the weird part, is that it's told non-linearly. So it's essentially kind of 2 halves of a story that it cuts in between a couple of times. So there's a part at the airport, and there's a part at sort of this apartment building / wedding reception.
Yeah.
And so if we try to connect them, the first part, the main story, you end up kind of at this apartment thing with a guy and girl. And so you end up going to this wedding reception thing. You end up getting wasted with the girl character. And you end up going back and basically bedding her is what I got from all of that.
Yeah, a question. Is that whole sequence, like, when they're, like, getting drunk and then they go back and whatnot and do what couples do, I guess. When they do all that stuff, is that all taking place before the beginning of 30 Flights of Loving?
That is
Like, is that all a flashback? Because that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I believe it's supposed to happen before, and I'll get to this because the final interpretation I ended up coming to relies on that ordering. And so, in terms of how I understood the timeline, all of that happened, and then there's a gap in the story, and you end up in a situation where the girl's basically trying to shoot you with a gun with no more bullets. The guy is injured, and you end up kind of basically have to carrying him through the airport to try to get him out. You go through a lot of kind of strange sequences where everything else is sped up around you. And then towards the end, you realize that the guy you're carrying is wanted. You know, your friend's a wanted guy now. You end up in a kind of pseudo shootout sequence. And then you end up in a sequence where you're running away from the cops. That's essentially the story.
Yeah, and then it kind of gets weird from there.
The whole thing is weird.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is weird. It ends with you getting hit by a truck.
Well, that's not how it ends. It ends with you actually on the motorcycle.
And then getting hit by a truck.
Yeah, because after being
We get hit by a truck
there's another
twice.
scene after it.
It's pretty well to assume
No,
that's not necessarily canonical.
Okay, so when you're on the motorcycle, you're just like sitting there with your lady, and then you get hit by a truck, and then it's like game over. Pretty sure.
Nope.
Okay, well then
There's still... You go back to the motorcycle scene and then not get hit by a truck.
Wait, yeah, no, you're right. Sorry, I was mixing up the two scenes in my head. This game jumped like it puts you into a spot, and then you go for a few seconds, and then it switches scenes, and it's like snap, and then you're in somewhere else completely, and it's like a little bit.
I'd say that's the biggest problem with 30 Flights of Loving. So Gravity Bone kept to a very linear story. You go through things in chronological order. Even something like To the Moon, which I know you didn't like, that still went in a reverse chronological order. Everything still had an order. 30 Flights jumped between things a little too often to follow.
30 Flights was like, here's a story right here, and here's the beginning and here's the end. And then they were like, we're going to start you here, and then you're going to go back to here, and then you're going to go up to here, and then you're going to go back to here, finish this bit, and then go back to the beginning. If I have it correct. I don't know how much sense that made. Not much, yeah. I'm assuming. It's just
I will say real quick that you had mentioned that you think it ends with them getting hit by the truck. And that might actually be the best interpretation for what happens at the end of the timeline. It's really subtle, but the first truck you see is when you're on the motorcycle sequence. But you come back to that later, suggesting that never actually happened.
Yeah.
But the second time you see the truck, the color is the same. You know, the world color is exactly the same as it was when you first leave the airport. That it turned to that kind of muted red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's like after. To me, that was kind of just like everything's gone wrong. We're all dead moment. Well, that's what it seems.
Yeah, because it doesn't. Like chronologically end with what happens, it doesn't make sense. But this is, I think, 30 Flights of Loving has like a lot of holes in the story because there is no information of why the girl is shooting at you with an empty gun. There is no explanation at all what happened with you guys. It starts with that plan of you going to do something, you know. Then you take the plane, and then it goes back to the wedding and whatever, right? It's all over the place, but there's like huge chunks of the story that are missing. That this is why I had problems with the game, because I was completely confused by the story. And in the end, she's obviously wounded and she is shooting at you, and you leave her behind and take the guy. And then after that, the scene with you on the motorbike and then crashing happens. So it's,
yeah,
I don't know.
That was one of the things that confused me the most, because it's like, okay, you get into this room, you get the two different characters, the boy and then the girl, and it kind of explains what their roles are. It gives you like this real quick flashy sequence that's like this entire game's thing. The entire game's MO is just throwing stuff in your face and throwing information at you and hoping that you figure it out. It throws these two characters at you and you're like, okay. And then you get onto the plane with them to go to the heist, which is, I think it was a bank heist, if I'm right. It just said vault on the plans. So I assume it was a bank.
It said safecracker at one point, but that was just describing the guy as far as I could tell.
Could still be just
so
a
they
bank.
are robbing a bank, right?
Okay. We'll just say that they were robbing a bank, because that was my assumption from the initial point. So, and then suddenly they're, like, shooting at each other? Like, that...
I know, right? It was just, like,
missing
parts of the story.
Wait, did I just miss, like, a minute and a half? Like, shouldn't there be, like, a sequence of either her turning on him, or is she trying to shoot somebody that's behind you? Like if I turned around and there was a dude and then he falls over or something right away, that would make sense, because she's trying to shoot someone else that's trying to hurt you. But it just kind of makes, like, I feel like I've missed something. You know what I mean?
And that's actually interesting you mention that, because as far as I can tell, because I've, for the most part, reconstructed the timeline, and yes, you're talking about that there's a gap. Well, there's one huge one. Basically, the entire mission is completely missing, and there's no strong indication of what happened. I'll go ahead and mention this. So there's a guy on YouTube with the username Errant Signal. And he actually made a really good video. Everyone should basically watch it after the podcast, where he went over a lot of the games that this guy had made. And so he talked about 30 Flights and Gravity Bone and all the other Enable games. And he had an interpretation of 30 Flights of Lovin. And if you notice, it happens for just a split second. During the shootout, there's a moment where the camera focuses on the bullet, and then it cuts back to the apartment.
Yeah.
The character on the bed in that shot is the other girl, not the one that you took to bed.
Well, that's interesting.
And if you go back to the scene at the wedding, she's there. The girl that had shot you in the original game is there at the reception.
Interesting.
And his conclusion, which I'm not certain of, is that essentially you took the wrong girl to bed and she got jealous. At least that's what I got from his interpretation. I'm not sure I completely agree with that, and there's a lot more issues with it. But it is worth mentioning that does seem to be what the game is hinting at.
Okay.
Are you a different character in the 30 Flights of Lovin than you were in the first one?
Not particularly decided either way, I don't think.
Wait. Because I just kind of assumed that Gravity Bone, you're a different person than in 30 Flights. Because if you're the same person in both games, well, that'll be weird.
Well, it's never explained.
I mean, don't you die in both of them?
Probably.
Yeah. which one was first, technically, in the time period that the game puts you in as well? Because you don't know that either.
I don't think there's particularly a chronological order to the games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only one that I think does is there was a couple of Half-Life 2 mods before this game where you played as Citizen Able as a baby.
Yeah, I haven't looked up at the other ones. Also, so the Gravity Bone is not the first one in the series, right?
No, I think it's the 6th, and 30 Flights is the 7th. But all the other ones are mods, which make them a little bit harder to get.
Yeah.
But is there any... Sorry, I was just going to ask, is there any key parts of the story in the previous ones that might help explain what is happening in these?
I don't know. I actually haven't played them. I just know of them because of Errant Signal's video.
I looked through a few of them, and it kind of looks like they don't connect all that much. They have a few reoccurring characters, but it just, from looking at like what I've seen, they don't have too much connection in general. They're all kind of their own little thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there are reoccurring themes in each one, which I think is interesting. Personally, I think it's a little sad. It's a little sad that it's kind of hard to figure that out just from looking at the Steam page for 30 Flights, because that's the only one of them that's on Steam. So a lot of people are just kind of playing that and just kind of like, huh? Why did I just pay $5 for 13 minutes of game?
Well, it does come bundled with Gravity Bone. So.
Okay, why did I just pay $5 for 35 minutes of game?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's still kind of rough value for what you're paying for at that point. I don't know. It's like, it's kind of a mishap of a, like, not a mishap, a mishmash of kind of experimental gameplay design and abstract storytelling, which makes it really, really, really hard to talk about. And it throws so much at you in such a short, compressed, packed up little tiny package of what, that you just kind of come out the other side going, what just hit me? And that's kind of how I'm still feeling, and I've played this thing 4 times now. And I did the developer commentary, and apparently I still missed stuff. So, like, I honestly don't know what to say. I kind of wish it was longer and took a little bit more time to explain things, but I mean, I don't think that's his style.
I definitely understand that interpretation. I mean, I liked Gravity Bone. It told a small vignette of a story, and it did a good job of it. But particularly the first few times I played 30 Flights of Loving, I really didn't like it. And I think now, having understood the story a lot more, I understand why. It's a story with a complete arc where they took the entire second act and threw it out the window. It's just a 3-act story with no second act. And so all you're left with is the exposition and the climax. And that's not enough to hold a story.
Yeah. I don't know. One thing that we haven't mentioned at all is 30 Flights Loving has some awesome jazz in it. Can we just take one moment to just mention that? The music in that thing is fucking glorious. I love it. It's absolutely awesome.
It has great music, but it's also interesting to note that it knows when to use it. It's not like there's a constant background music. There are long periods of time with no background music. Basically the entire second level before the chase scene in Gravity Bone has no music. And there are huge segments of 30 Flights that don't have music either.
Yeah, no, I really, really, really like the music in 30 Flights Loving in particular. Like, the scene when you're pushing your friend, or I assume he's your friend, your wounded friend who's been shot a bunch of times in the chest, into the airport, and it's just that music playing in the background. That is some amazing atmospheric jazz, and I really, really liked the way that it made it fit. Like, it really gave a lot of tension, and that. Yes, it's missing its second act, but once you get into that third act, that end sequence, I actually really liked it. Honestly, I never thought I could like a Quake Engine game, but I guess this has kind of proven me wrong. I mean, if I had just picked it up not knowing what it was and played it, I probably would have just hated it. But I think it's something that you kind of need to look at a little bit more than just giving it the standard playthrough. I don't have too much to say, because even though I did enjoy it, I have so much trouble deconstructing this thing. It's so compact. Like, I'm gonna look back at like other games that we've done. Like, I'm gonna use the beginner's guide as an example. That thing, it's very big. It's very like, it's an hour and a half long. It's stretched out, and you know exactly what they're saying. It has a full arc from beginning to end, and you know. This is like, boom, story done. And it melted. I think my brain dripped out of my ear a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
I wanted to talk about the ending of 30 Flights of Loving. What did you guys think of that? Because I found it to be slightly, I don't know, self-glorifying, with the, that being like art exposition and them saying, hey, this was a game that was made by us, like the credit scene, which is playable, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it has been set up like in a museum, and then you go and then there's stuff about Bardol's Law and
Bernoulli's
like,
Law. Yeah, I mean,
Bernoulli's Law.
That is one that I still find to this day the weirdest thing about that game. It's like, oh, is it giving credit to physics? Is it just trying to be an educational
it's so
game?
confusing.
Yeah,
Why is that there?
I just kind of completely brushed that off and was like, okay, this is just them being artsy. That's kind of how I looked at it. But there's probably more to it.
But nothing
than
else in that game is just there. Everything else has a purpose. but I could never figure out why that's there.
Well, it's a Quake engine game, so
that's
they're
what
not going to be
confused me.
crediting physics.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Still, it was quite interesting to see that thing. I don't know. I just didn't know what to think of it, and I thought guys might have a bit of an idea.
No, that's still a really confusing sequence.
I think I got a lot more out of Gravity Bone than I got out of 30 Flights of Loving. I don't know about you guys, but to me, Gravity Bone was a very nice little package, and you knew more or less what was happening aside from the disconnect between the two missions. You knew more or less what was happening. You play from beginning to end, and you're like, okay, that's an interesting little thing. Whereas 30 Flights Loving, it's just a confusing, like, mumble jumble of interesting, but strange and confusing. Essentially,
Yeah.
it's like watching a heist movie and then falling asleep in the like
Yeah.
it's kind of what it is. It's like, okay, so you got the first 15 minutes and the last 12 minutes of a James Bond film or of a heist film. That's kind of what it felt like. And I think it's really hard to deconstruct a story where I genuinely feel that I'm missing bits of it. I mean, there isn't really much more that we can look at. I mean, there's a few, like, I don't know if either of you guys read it, but there's actually a newspaper clipping in the main menu. Did either of you guys read that?
No, I didn't read that
Nope.
one. I read a few that were in-game, though.
Yeah, I looked at that briefly
Yeah.
and I just kind of skimmed it, and it didn't have anything even remotely related to it. I was kind of hoping that maybe after you beat the game or something, it would change to like, oh, this is what happened, or this was the full heist, or this was the full story, but no, that didn't help. I was just
No.
curious if you guys got anything out of that. I don't know. I think that they're interesting, strange games with cool atmosphere. I don't really have much else to say at this point. I don't know about you two, though.
There's one last thing I wanted to analyze, which is there is sort of that chronological story where at the end there's the car and, of course, the credits. But just before that and after all of that, they have the same essentially shot. And that is where you're on the back of the motorcycle. You're driving down. And I really didn't have any idea what that was until I played through it with the developer commentary on. And I actually made a note that was mentioning that the creator had said that he was trying to emulate the feel of being up at some ungodly hour. You're just, driving. There's no one else out there, and it's kind of, I would use the word zen. He didn't, but I would use the word zen. And I'm still kind of curious what you think that had to do with the rest of the story. Why did it end on that? Because, I have some thoughts, but I don't know.
So we're talking about driving down the road in 30 Flights, right?
Yeah, particularly the motorcycle scene. Because there's a couple other points where you're driving down the road, but that one's where the cops are following you. I'm thinking about the one where you're just on the motorcycle.
Yeah. I don't know. The scene where you're just driving down the road on the motorcycle just seemed kind of disjointed to me, because the game kind of hops around so much. That point there just kind of, it didn't seem to fit into anything to me. I'm assuming it's supposed to, but at least, because at that point in the developer commentary, I was just kind of not skipping them, but skimming them, and I didn't feel like that part really meant anything to me, at least I didn't get anything out of it. I don't know about you, Mike.
I don't know. I thought I had a weird thing with the driving scenes that, like, because I played Gravity Bone first, it connected back to that for me. Because in all of the driving scenes, be that the chase in the end, be that Zen driving scene, and then the end of Gravity Bone when you're dead and you have your life flashing by, there's a lot of driving scenes there as well. And they all seem to be very calming and very just, let's take a break and let's just look at the colors and stuff. Because there's no real interaction in them anyway, so.
It's like,
I don't know.
a break.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting because, when you had mentioned Gravity Bone and that, I realized both games end on particularly striking moments. 30
Yeah.
Flights of Loving ends with you on the motorcycle. And in particular, Gravity Bone. Since I don't think we mentioned it, I'll go over it real quick. Because there's essentially 4 sequences in the flashback. There's one where, well, depending on what you do, you run towards a car and it explodes. There's the second one, which I need to double check my notes about. Oh yeah, that's the one where you're in the car chase and there are guys shooting at you. Yeah. There's a really quick one where there's a close-up of a girl's face, and I believe it's the same one from that you basically ends up trying to shoot you in 30 Flights.
Yeah, the other girl.
No, well, yes.
Or is it? I think it's the other girl.
Other girl is the one that I said kills you, the one that shoots you.
Yeah, but the close-up of the face looks kind of like her, doesn't it?
They have completely different hair.
I think it's the girl you're actually supposed to be on the same side of in 30 Flights.
Okay.
And I noticed that because the very last sequence it looks like some sort of race. And you follow a girl who's winning, and I'm pretty sure, like 80% certain that's the same one in 30 Flights.
Okay.
And so it's interesting. Both of them sort of end on sequences with her. If that's the case, they both end on sequences. One where it's sort of a track running, and one where you're on the back of her motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of
interesting.
Supposed to imply that, like, she is the most important person to the character's life or something? Like, is there something to gain from that? Like, why were those sequences there?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. So this is the thing. I thought it was the other girl, but I guess you're right. What I also noticed, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but you know the voice that's supposed to be the voice that you hear when you get the recordings, and that gives you the mission in Gravity Bone.
Yeah.
It sounds like the same voice that you hear when the close-up of the face happens in that flashback scene.
Maybe.
Like they're both muffled, but they sound exactly the same. So that's why I don't know.
Could just
I
be
have
the
to
same
hear that again.
Kind of weird.
voice actor, maybe.
Yeah, but like, is it on purpose that they're using the same voice there, or is it just because they only had one female voice actor? So
Are these the two? This is in Gravity Bone, right? That we're talking.
Yeah,
about?
in Gravity Bone. So you get the missions.
Yeah.
You hear them on the recording tape, right?
The
And it's the same voice that.
briefcase.
So they're all muffled, so you don't. Yeah, sorry, the briefcase. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all muffled, so you can't actually hear it, but they sound extremely similar to. So the two recordings sound similar to the voice that you hear when the flashback of the face happens.
Yeah. That could be intentional. That.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then again, I don't know. It kind of links between the two games again, and like so you don't actually know. So playing as Citizen Abel in Gravity Bone, you don't know if you're a good guy or a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know if you're working for a good organization or bad, and then
I think you're
doing the heist.
gun for hire, maybe.
I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
Because you're getting
It could
paid
be.
in cash at the end, including tax
I
deductions.
suppose so.
So it's like full payment. It's like $15,000 after tax deduction, $3,700. That was funny. I don't know.
I also think it's silly that they dropped in that like payment part because you can't do anything with the money you earn as well. So it's like
It's a cutscene.
It was just part of
there.
the cutscene. It's just like a detail.
There's a garnish on top. I don't know. I think that
with sprinkles.
they have a shockingly large amount in them considering they're a low poly quick engine game with blockhead dudes that look like scary Minecraft people, but like scary.
Yeah.
I don't think that in Gravity Bone you're necessarily a good person. Like, I'm not certain you're working for government or anything. Maybe you're like, you might be, but I would be willing to bet that you're some sort of gun for hire or private organization agent or something. That's just
because like it does
infiltrating.
feel that like you are an agent, and with the name Citizen Abel and everything. I don't know.
You might be.
It's interesting. I would say, like, you're talking about this game not really explaining a lot of what it is you do. And I would say on
Yeah.
the opposite spectrum of that is a game like Mirror's Edge, where I think they spend too much time trying to explain what it is you do, to the point where it actually undercuts the story, because the story of the game has nothing to do with that. And I think Gravity Bone actually did it the right way, that if the game is not about, what the character's job is, don't care about what the character's job is.
I suppose, yeah. I don't know. It's just for me, it's like it was one of the things that just kept on bugging me because I don't know. I think for me personally, it would help explain the story a bit. But
I personally, just straight up, I'm going to be totally honest, I like Gravity Bone a lot more than 30 Flights 11.
Yeah.
I like the less linear feel to it. I like the usage of Roller Coaster Tycoon sound bites. No. But I found Gravity Bone to be a nice little game, whereas 30 Flights I would describe much more as a little experience. You know what I mean? It's more of a, I hate this term, walking simulator. That's what it is. It's a really short walking simulator. There's very little interaction with the game itself, whereas in Gravity Bone you spend a lot of time, bashing locks open and looking for things and taking photos of stuff and then suddenly running and then dying horribly.
yeah.
I mean, I definitely agree with you in your conclusion, even if I don't necessarily get there the same way. To me, that I believe that there is sort of a genre or a style of a game that is artsy. It's a game where they try to do something experimental for the sake of being experimental. And in the case of 30 Flights of Loving, it doesn't work in their favor. It doesn't work in its favor. It tries to do something interesting and unique, but it kind of undercuts its story by doing that. Gravity Bone has a cohesive story. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It's pretty clear what's going on. And I think it did a much better job of telling its story than 30 Flights did of telling its.
Yeah, I think it just had better execution than 30 Flights. As a package, though, because they're sold together on Steam, or you can just go get Gravity Bone for free, like, what do you guys think of it as a package, like, for the two of them? I personally feel that I would rather have just played the first half, because 30 Flights Loving, it had that great soundtrack and it had some really interesting level design, but there's just that huge hole, that huge gaping hole in the plot line there, where there's some, it feels like there should be something there that just isn't.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, yeah,
I agree with you. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. I basically already said what I was going to say.
I was just gonna say I agree with Blind on the fact that I feel that Gravity Bone is a better game for me personally. And so I don't know if they were selling them separately. So like if Gravity Bone wasn't free, and I knew about, like, I watched them on YouTube or something and I watched the streamer, I would pick up Gravity Bone, and not 30 Flights of Loving.
Gravity Bone is free. There's no cost if you don't like it. Just go download it, try it, and if you liked it that much, go ahead and pick up 30 Flights, even if you're not going to play it, because support the developer.
Yeah, I don't feel bad giving him money. I mean, he puts a lot of time and effort into his games, and honestly, there's a ton of thought put into them. I don't feel ripped off. I mean, it was a valid $5 purchase. It's just, I think it's, if you see it on sale for $1, which I have actually seen it on sale for $1 before, just grab it, because it's a fun little 15-minute romp through an awesome little atmosphere and a Quake engine game, and that's hard to do. Like, Quake has about as much atmosphere as a dry potato, so it's like just like the Quake engine, not Quake the game, but like what is there is interesting. It's just bizarre as hell, and I think I'm pretty much done. I don't know if we want to wrap up or if we want to if anybody else has
Well, I was
anything
just
else
going to
to
give
say.
a technical warning to people who want to play this game. If you have a larger than 1080p screen, or if you have screens with two different resolutions, you will have some trouble with the game, so you should try playing it in windowed mode.
And I will also mention, like, there's a ton of technical issues with this game. I had actually tried to play it before on my Mac, since it does have a Mac build, and my particular laptop actually has two GPUs, an integrated Intel GPU and a dedicated NVIDIA one. And up until recently, like, it would not run on my NVIDIA GPU. I had to use my Intel GPU, and there's a bunch of like weird issues like that. Like, you can get it to work, but you might need to work with it to, try stuff until it works, basically.
I had no technical issues with either of them at all. They loaded up. They were in a tiny ass window and it cramped and broke my entire resolution. Went to the options menu, resized the windows, put it in window mode, done. I didn't have any crashing problems. The only issue I had technically was with Gravity Bone, and that's just because I swear to God, the FOV in that thing was like 50. And in 30 Flights of Loving, I was fine FOV wise, and everything was fine up until you get to the point where you pick up your friend, because that cuts off half the screen, and it was like headache. So both of the games gave me a headache, but luckily they were short enough so that by the time the headache started to set in, they were over. Which is why I actually had a harder time getting through the developer commentary, especially in that point when you're carrying your friend, because it's like I'm slowly walking through reading all these clips and just my head's starting to ache. And
I wish they did like audio commentary on it.
yeah, I mean, it's short enough you could have very easily. I don't know. I could record an audio commentary for you if you want. I'll just record all the bubbles and just done.
Do it.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting. That's what it is.
Definitely.
It's a neat little thing, and I really wish there was maybe another 4 to 5 minutes in 30 Flights of Loving. Maybe even Gravity Bone too. Maybe another mission. I was kind of expecting there to be another mission. I don't know why. I was thinking like, okay, there's gonna be about 3 missions in this thing.
I liked it that it didn't have 3 missions, in that it's like, oh, okay, so, I'm going to move on. There's going to be something else. Oh, no, okay. So I got shot. All right, so I'm going to chase her, and I'm going to go, and now I'm dead.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about the Gravity Bone that's a bit confusing as well, because she shoots you so many times. Like, in front of the elevator at first, it's just like, what? How am I still alive? Okay, let's go for the chase.
And now we're, right, yeah, we're still in Quake Engine, so we're running like 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But and that's what I like. The speed of the chase is just amazing. And I like, for me personally, the chase was the best part of the game.
Chase was pretty cool.
Yeah, now that we're talking about Quake Engine and being shot and shooting at people, I just remembered something about 30 Flights of Loving that I wanted to ask about. So, when you see the wounded friend girl shooting scene for the second time, you fall from the vents into the room, and you come into the room last. They're already there. He is wounded on the cart. Oh no, he's sitting on. He's on the boxes. She is already shooting her empty gun, so it's not necessarily at you. She's just shooting it in empty space. Is she in shock over something? Was she trying to help your friend? Did she shoot him? Did something happen? Right. So this is like so many open things. But the first time you play it, you think she's shooting at you because you don't see that first part where you drop in and stuff has already happened. So.
That's an interesting detail to note. I mean, I chalked it more up to, I don't want to say developer laziness, but essentially that it's one scene, and they just said, okay, for, this time you go through the scene, this is your spawn point, and the next time you go through the scene, this is your spawn point. That it's essentially just the same scene.
Yeah. But I don't know. For me, it was just like extra detail that I just remembered it, and I know when I played it, I thought of it like, why is it done like this?
Because, I mean, she's still shooting at you in the first scene after you get out of line of sight, so it's not like that's unique to the other scene.
And if she,
but it's just, I don't know.
If she was in shock, wouldn't you save her?
I know, that's like, why did she shoot your friend?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if
that's
she was
the implication, I guess.
Well, because they blocked themselves into the room, and like they barricaded themselves in, and there was no other bodies in there, so there's literally nobody else she could have been shooting at. It was either you or your friend.
Unless the shooting was like earlier, she emptied her clip and she's still in shock and still shooting, even though they're in the other room now. Because whatever happened before you all went through the vents, or before they went some other way and you went through the vent. Like, I don't know. It just annoys me that there's a huge part of it that it's missing. That, I don't know. It kind of made the game not enjoyable to me. I don't know. But like, other than that,
it was. Yeah, no, I do get that. I do get that. I still I don't know if I like this game or not. I'm gonna be totally honest. It's just...
It's the same thing, right? I can't say that there is something in this game that makes me dislike it, but it's the lack of story that prevents me from saying, hey, it was a nice experimental game.
It's definitely experimental.
So, I don't know.
Well, I think I think we've kind of come to our conclusion. I think
so too.
I think we're kind of at, which is funny because we literally just hit like 59 minutes of my audio recording. It's like it's a weird experimental thing, and there's something there, but I can't quite put my hand on what. So,
yep.
I guess that was episode 4 of the StoryMode podcast. My name is Blind. Most of the people hanging out in chat probably know me.
It's your channel.
I stream a lot. This is my channel. Lewis, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do and why you're here. Unfortunately,
I don't know. I hang out in Blind's chat, so you can definitely see me there. I do a couple different random stuff on the internet. But I will say that I plan on picking up live streaming, not this week, but the week after. So my Twitch name is on the bottom of the screen here somewhere, LRFLEW. Feel free to follow me and catch me. I think I'm going to actually try playing Psychonauts when I start streaming again. So you can look forward to that.
And Mike, I think you have a long list of things that you do, but just give us the short list.
Yeah, hey, hi, I'm Mike Gaming. Mike is not really my name. I sometimes stream, and I try to stream more. I'm also a community manager at Nights of the Stream, and I do coding for other streamers and some game dev. And yeah, my name is not on the screen, but I'm sure you can find me on Twitch.
Yeah, or you can just bug him by tweeting at him at Hi, I'm Mike Gaming.
Oh yeah, that works as well.
And I'm BlindiRL, and this has been episode 4 of the StoryMode podcast. Check us out on projectstorymode.com, and you can tweet at us at RealStoryMode. You should probably tweet at us about how amazing this episode was, and I hope that you guys all tune in next month, which is something that's weird to say. Next week just falls off the lip, but next month is a kind of a weird word. I hope you guys will tune in next month for the next episode of the StoryMode podcast, and I hope that you guys all have a lovely, lovely afternoon. And I guess that's it. Bye, guys.